Hey everybody, welcome to the first episode of Cougar Dash. I'm Cody Schoeler here with my co-host Ryan Root, here to talk about everything WSU football. But first, we're going to start with a little Pac-12 news and the topic and the story that has been all over the headlines all across the country and specifically the West Coast. No football and no sports at all in 2020, and the possibility of a spring football season. They've kind of talked about wanting to do that. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's a pipe dream. I think it's unrealistic, and I think it's going to be a while before we see Pac-12 football played.
Well, Cody, I appreciate your insight and all, but I'll tell you why you're wrong. So, spring football needs to happen, just plain and simple. WSU's been a football school for way too long, and we need a season to happen. We're dead last in the Power Five for total revenue from our athletic department. Whichever way that we need to get a spring football season going, it needs to happen, plain and simple.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that there's a lot of reasons for that. Money's a huge thing, and people are and schools are going to lose a lot of money without playing football. But if you're just looking at, the player safety has been a huge thing in this whole pandemic with COVID, and just even before that with concussions and safety, and trying to fit a spring football season in, and then turning around and playing a fall football season, at the start of 2021. If you put those two seasons back to back, that's just not going to happen. Players are going to opt out for COVID, for concussions, for safety, because that's just too much to put their bodies through. These are 18 to 22-year-old kids, and they can't take that. And you add in, having to do school 2 semesters back to back. In the summer, usually they gives them, a time to take a little break, but that just isn't happening if they're playing 20 games within a year.
Well, for WSU specifically, I mean, 800 plus tests, only 7 positive cases, 2 of which were roommates. So it's really 6 if you want to put it that way. I mean, less than 1% of our tests turned positive. WSU's been doing a tremendous job of handling this with our student athletes. And you can even look across the state at UW, 1,000 plus tests under 20 positive, which is a little bit above 1%. So, add that to the list of why we're better. But the point being, we're doing a great job at containing this virus. And if we need to do so much as go independent to face some of these teams and get some revenue in, if we're the lone Pac 12 team going independent, that's going to not only generate revenue and viewers, but I mean, how much confidence are you going to have as the lone Pac 12 team going against, you know, Notre Dame or Nebraska or all these other teams that are moving around conferences? What's this that WSU can't do the same thing?
Yeah, and I think a lot of that hinges on what these other conferences want to do, because the only other Power Five conference so far that has done the same thing the Pac-12 done is the Big Ten, and even they have some of those schools that are looking to kind of go outside, and the Ohio States and the Michigans and the Nebraskas are going to try to play in the fall because they don't want to have to sandwich 2 seasons back to back. So if you see the SEC and the ACC, which now Notre Dame is playing that schedule, and the Big 12 play, then there really is no. I don't know what the market is for spring football if you have 3 of the top conferences already playing. If the national champion's already decided in January, then if the Pac-12 trots out there in March, then I mean, who really cares? Like it's good for the money and it's good for the players, but playing after a championship's already decided, then what are you playing for? Like, sure, you can have a Pac-12 champion, but it's just going to be really weird, and there's going to be who knows who's watching. So we'll just have to see.
And I get it. All the fall sports are moving to this where we're going to have to coordinate every single sport in the university at the same time. And I don't want to be that scheduling staff over at WSU. But needless to say, basketball not going to play in Martin Stadium. Volleyball is not going to play in the. They're not going to play in the swimming pools. Like, we all have our own area to play in. Martin will get its fair share of, competitive Cougar football if we are able to host home games, which I mean, I might as well ask you, what do you think is the chance of having a bubble situation in college football?
I think a bubble is just not going to happen in terms of all the Pac-12 getting together and bubbling in the same place. I just think that's too many. If you look at college football rosters with 80 something players, and then you have to find a place where everybody's playing, all in one game. And another point that I've heard brought up with that is, football, you can't play 6 games in a row on a football field. You can do that on a basketball court and maybe clean up some scuff marks, but by the time the 7 p.m. game gets on, the field's going to be torn up. It's going to be in terrible shape, and players are going to get even more injured. So I don't think a bubble is going to happen. And to go back to your point of WSU has Martin Stadium to play in all by itself, so they're going to be playing in it. But the other question is, what players are going to be playing in it? When Oregon comes to Pullman, Penny Sewell's not playing if there's a spring football season. That guy's going to go top 5 in the draft. WSU isn't necessarily as impacted by it. They don't have, first round NFL draft talents, but anybody that wants to go play
You're
at the
forgetting
next
about
level,
Borge, but okay,
well,
keep
he's not
going.
a first rounder, but
We'll see about that.
any player that wants to go secure a contract and get paid in the NFL isn't, they're going to go to the combine. They're going to go to the Senior Bowl. They're not going to play, college football in the spring. So even if the Pac-12 does get product on the field in the spring, I don't think it's the Pac-12 football that we're going to be used to. I don't think, I think a lot of the good players are going to opt out. So even if WSU has Martin Stadium all to itself, if Max Borghi doesn't play, if the good players aren't playing, then I mean, who's watching it? People don't have the Pac-12 network already, and they're surely not going to if that's the product that they're paying for.
To be quite honest, I think the we want to play hashtag kind of cancels out that statement, Cody. You got players like Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields coming from Power 5 schools that say that we want to play no matter what it takes. We want to have good regulations put in place in order to play. I think that these players do want to be a part of a conference season, wherever that they may play from. I mean, WSU is facing yet another quarterback situation in this upcoming season. Besides the one transfer that we have coming in to the school, it's just these quarterbacks that we've been breeding the past couple of years. These these players want to play no matter how we're able to do it, but they want to play. You look at Borgie, you look at Jahad Woods, you look at Abe Lucas, even Blake Mazur, all that matters. They want to play. They want to have that final statement put in place before they could potentially turn pro.
Yeah, and I think WSU, that's true. These guys need the season to boost their draft stock, and Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields, their draft stock's pretty secure. Even if they go out and get injured, they're probably still going to get drafted. But we've seen a lot of first rounders already opt out. Javon Holland from Oregon opted out. I think Oregon and other schools that have a lot more NFL caliber talent would follow suit. So maybe that's good for WSU. Maybe WSU is playing backup quarterbacks and backup big position players. So maybe that's an example of a good reason for them. But maybe those players do opt out. We've seen players opt out for health reasons, for the We Are United reasons, and this kind of gives them more ammunition in a way. They said it wasn't safe to play. They wanted more testing. They wanted to feel secure, and those, now that the Pac-12 kind of canceled, it shows them that they were right in a way. The test, they didn't have enough testing. They didn't feel safe for that season.
Look, it just comes down to sports as entertaining as it is. It comes down to the fans. Fans want to see sports more than ever right now. I mean, the last time we haven't had a college football season was what, in 1918, over 100 years ago. We're not used to not having sports. I mean, sports is, you look at the NFL, they own a day of the week practically. It baffles all of us how much sports affects everybody's mentality, and it needs to happen not only for WSU's case, but just for the whole conference, hell, the NCAA for that matter.
Yeah. And speaking of, that season and wanting to have it happen. One guy who probably wants the season to happen more than anybody is head coach Nick Rolovich. He was hired in January. Probably very excited. His first, Power Five opportunity to be a head coach, to follow up Mike Leach, and his very interesting personality. And now he's probably going to have to wait over a year from his hiring to coach a game, if not even get an on the field practice. And so on the surface, that looks like it sucks, and it does suck a lot. But I think this could kind of be a blessing in disguise for Nick Rolovich. I'm curious to see what you think about that.
Well, it's no secret. Any first-year head coach in the Pac-12, Big Ten, Mountain West, Big Sky, whatever conference has been canceled, it's no secret that any first-year head coach or staff member is definitely in the rough here. They are going to not be able to coach a game, let alone a practice. And like you said, with Rolovich's case, it's been over a year since he's been hired. And with all that momentum coming into Pullman and him being a local favorite on social media and everything, he basically loses all that. I mean, we haven't seen the guy coach yet. We haven't seen an official practice take place. It definitely hurts his stock as far as the fans go in supporting him.
Yeah, and I see a question in the chat talking about asking about the departure of Mike Leach and how that affects WSU. I think the way Nick Rolovich has come in and kind of just taken over and been that social media and that interesting personality that Leach was, I think a lot of people have kind of forgotten about him and are ready to move on. I think people got tired of kind of seeing the same thing over and over again, and so I think it's a good time to bring something new. And going off of that, this gives Nick Rolovich time to start building something new. If a season played in 1 month and he had to start practicing now, that's a month to install. He's been installing a system over Zoom and all that, but with really getting on the field, a bunch of players he doesn't know, a new system they don't know, and a team that was going to be competitive, but went, 6-6 before the bowl game last year. Like, they were not this great team that was in the top 25 a few years ago. This may have been, a bad season for him. If they missed a bowl game in his first year, the fans wouldn't have liked that. So now, if he gets a year to build his team and to come in his first year with some of his own recruits, which he wouldn't have this year with some of his own players, this gives him time to really build up this team to be the team that he wanted to be, and not the team that he took over and just kind of had to pilot the ship.
I mean, just to build off that, Cody, Leach, as great of a coach as he was for WSU, and he took us to many, many high places with his air raid offense. You brought it up already. The 6-6 season before the bowl game, which I'll be honest, the bowl game was an embarrassment to watch already, based off the name, the Cheez-It Bowl, which is probably about the lamest bowl game name I've probably ever heard. But we allowed Oregon State to score 50 plus points on us last year. Sure, we scored a point extra that game because we're throwing 1,000 passing yards a game, but it's not that hard to pick up on Mike Leach's offense in the Pac-12 when we've had Apple Cup struggles for however long, and we have UW coaches talking smack to Mike Leach, and Mike Leach making headlines because he's talking about pirates and this and that. It as much as it was great to watch him coach, as much as it was great to have him, on the shoe and the Luke Falk era, I think we're over it. I agree with you, Cody. Rolovich brings a great personality to this school. I mean, the guy was wearing a bunch of what are those, the flower necklace, the lays, right? He's wearing lays on the sideline, screaming his head off during Hawaii games. I want to see him do that in Pullman. I want to see him bring that energy to WSU. We're used to having that great presence in the coach department for all. As much of a meme as Mike Leach was, I think Rolovich has a great pedestal to go off of and take us to further and greater places.
Mm-hmm. And this obviously all depends on how good Nick Rolovich does and what type of production he brings to this team. Because if he kind of struggles out of the gate like a lot of coaches before Leach did, then people are going to be begging for Mike Leach back. If he can't get to those same heights that Leach did, and Leach was a quarterback whisperer. I mean, he pulled Gardner Minshew from about to be a backup and Anthony Gordon off of being a backup at WSU for years. People sort of came to expect that from WSU. Nick Rolovich may be able to do the same thing. Hawaii was a great passing offense as well, but this it's not going to be more of the same. That could be good. That could be bad. The defense may be better. The defense was pretty bad the past couple of years with
very
Leach.
bad, very bad.
So it doesn't take much to be better, but we just have to see what that is, because the unknown is good because it could be great. Nick Rolovich could lead WSU to a national championship. We know Mike Leach didn't. So for those reasons, and I think with that, if he has a whole year to just develop his players, especially if they are granted, if he doesn't lose any for eligibility, then I think that's going to be huge. And I think he could have a great first year.
As much as the cancellation was due to COVID and the global pandemic and all, I believe a secondary reason for these cancellations in some of these conferences, I think this player union is really put a hiccup in Rolovich's momentum going into WSU. I mean, with the leaked phone call coming out between him and Cassidy Woods, which in my opinion, I believe it was a little bit blown out of proportion. But, that definitely does not put a good taste into this whole locker room, where Rolovich is practically, quote unquote, the opposition in this player union. Without a season, all the heads are kind of turned towards Rolovich, saying, we know COVID canceled this whole thing, but we also know that the union didn't fall through the way that we wanted it. And even though players have been backing up Rolovich on Twitter and this and that, saying that he's a great mentor and he was there for the team after Bryce Beekman's passing, as much as they want to say that he's been a great role model outside that locker room, I mean, the public's kind of looking down on Rolovich already just for this leaked phone call, and that's obviously not a good way to start when you haven't even coached a game yet.
Yeah, but this also gives them time to fix that, to remedy that. If they played a season in a month and these questions were still around, he's focusing on football. He's focusing on coaching. These things might get swept under the rug in terms of the media, but in terms of the team and the actual issue, it also gets swept under the rug and it's not really dealt with. Now he has a chance to kind of to fix that. He has been pretty good in the media. He is good at making himself appear likable in the media. So I don't really doubt that he will be able to do that with this issue. And this gives him more time to talk to the players and to build that. Because I think these players like him for sure, but they haven't had that much time with him. A few months after he was hired, everything went online. So he's going to have that chance now once practices start up, which they can whenever they're kind of allowed in the state. I think this gives him time to build that team chemistry and team morale that he wants, because he hasn't really had the opportunity to install that. So I think whether the season happens in the spring or happens next fall, he will have the team that he wants in terms of personnel, but also in terms of just morale and chemistry. So talking about some of those players, Nick Rolovich obviously is the biggest topic when you're thinking about how he benefits from the season. But the players, obviously, they all benefit or are hurt by this postponement and or cancellation in different ways. And so the first one that kind of hit the headlines this morning was Tay Martin. Tay Martin, senior wide receiver, has been great in his time at WSU, announced he entered the transfer portal. So I'm curious to know what you think about that and the decision that he made.
Well, to be frankly honest, I think he wins in this situation. It's obvious that WSU has had a great receiving core for the past couple of years, given air raid offense. But Tay Martin's been a local favorite for these past 3 years. Has been a great producer for this offense. But him entering the transfer portal, I don't think is a knock on WSU at all. It's just they're not playing, and the SEC or the ACC might play. Who's to say that he might not end up at Mississippi State and he can just go right back into the air raid offense himself. I think Tay Martin definitely wins in this situation.
Yeah, on the surface, I kind of see that. Obviously, if he has a chance to play this year, how can that be a loss? But when you look at it, the Pac-12 and the Big Ten already said they're not playing. I don't expect any of the kind of group of five ones to really be able to play. Maybe some of them do. So you're looking at SEC, ACC, and Big 12. How many of those teams that are going to be good are in need of a receiver like Tay Martin? Tay Martin's good, but it's like those teams are pretty set. They're filling out with 5 stars and great recruits every year. Obviously he still has his redshirt year. He was a true senior, so he can whatever happens this year sit out, even if the team that he transfers to does play. So he still has that chance to come back next year. But I don't know what the perfect fit is for him. Maybe Mississippi State because he does know Mike Leach, and maybe some of these places. But I mean, WSU was a team that was going to pass it a bunch. That's great for a receiver. Tay Martin hasn't lit the world on fire in the Pac-12 to where any team is going to want him. So now if you're narrowing it down to three of the best conferences, I don't know where he fits in.
Most definitely. I mean, it's no secret that the SEC and the ACC, even the Big 12 for that matter, it's no secret that they've had some great powerhouse go through there with just Alabama and LSU alone. You could go on and talk about the other great teams that have come out of those conferences, but Tay Martin's got to get his reps somewhere, and if it's not going to happen for the Pac-12 this spring, then why not move down and have the best football competition you can have as a college athlete?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so we've got a guy in chat here asking about the Pac-12 and thinking that apparently we're talking about soccer. No, I don't think we're going to be talking about any soccer here. We're going to focus on kind of a real sport. And so we're going to move on to another player that I think I have a pretty hot take on this guy, Max Borge. I'm going to say he is a winner in this situation. I think that
Really?
he actually benefits from this. I think the loser here is fans of Max Borge, because I think however this plays out, we've lost a year of watching him play Cougar football. He either leaves after this season and we're done watching him, or he sticks around and just plays one more season, leaves after what would have been his senior year. But when you're looking at the draft and these running backs, the huge knock always is the just the amount of wear and tear on these guys. Jonathan Taylor was a great running back, but he had so many carries in college that teams are worried about that. The running back shelf life in the NFL is not big. It's not long. So Max Borge, if he gets, into the draft with 200 less carries, I think that's big for him. Obviously, he wants to play, so this is going to suck for him. But if you're looking to the future with him, this could help, especially if he gets time to just kind of develop and get ready for the draft. If that's what he wants to do this year, I don't know. If he wants to come back, then I think he's going to be fresh next year and he's going to look really good.
Now, Cody, before I tell you how you're wrong, we'll go back to NMAX here saying that all Americans are dumb idiots and soccer is in fact a real sport. Well, I will say, NMAX, football players go through concussions and broken bones. Soccer players try to get in an Academy Award every game. So back to Max Borge. Big loser in this situation. Big loser. Now, it's no secret that Borge is the highlight of player talent at WSU. Sure, we had Anthony Gordon last year throw 1 million passing yards downfield, but we all know how that worked out for him. We go to Max Borge, first 2 years, 29 total touchdowns for the Cougars. He's been killing it on offense. We all know that he's a receiving threat, but this could have been the year that he could expand his rushing talent. This could have been the year that Coach Rolovich would come into town with his rushing success from last year, which by rushing success, I do mean that they doubled our yards per game last year at Hawaii. Rolovich has coached 2,000-yard running backs in his tenure at Hawaii with 15 yards rushing one season. That's some Adrian Peterson numbers right there. You throw that on Max Borge, and we're looking at a first-round talent. Because although I can sit here and tell you he's a top 10 running back in the nation, I'll go with top 20, considering I guess people want to downplay the next Christian McCaffrey. But this next season, if he adds to his rushing resume, this could be a total game changer in his stock. I mean, how else can you not see this as a big loss for Max Borge in terms of the moment Rolovich was hired, he was the one who got on Twitter and said, "I guess I'm getting more touches now." Borge knew this next season was going to be a big deal.
Yeah, and he's going to get those touches for sure. It just may come in 1 year, and then with a year off to kind of just rest and heal your body, I think he would be absolutely electric. So I think that's a huge thing. And so another group, not even a specific player, but a position group that was going to be a huge story for WSU and the Cougars this year is the quarterbacks. I say quarterbacks because we don't know who the starter was going to be. We didn't even get a practice on the field, so I don't even think Nick Rolovich knew who the starter was going to be. And I think this is bad for them. I think just losing this amount of time is really bad, and I think Rolovich may now go out and get the recruit that he wants. All these guys, Jaden DeLora, he was able to secure, but these guys were all the previous regime in a way. Mike Leach recruited them and got them to come to Pullman. Not saying that doesn't mean that Nick Rolovich would love them and use them, but there may be a guy that he wants and he can bring in. So I think this hurts them because they, practice is big, but you can't replicate games. So whoever was going to get that opportunity this year to develop in-game action, they lost that, and so I think that hurts them.
Well, quarterbacks, I'll actually say are a winner in this case. Reason being is, instead of bringing the transfer savior that we've had these past 2 years, we're now stuck with the quarterbacks that we've been breeding this whole time in Cam and Cooper, Gunnar Cruz. Yeah, the battle's really between those two. The guy for State coming in, I believe, what's his last name? Constantine, I think. Is that his name correct?
Yeah, something like that.
He played an all right season. Don't get me wrong, but he's coming in, and we got another JUCO guy coming in. And unless he's the next Anthony Gordon, or if we were running the air offense, I think it's between Cam and Cooper and Gunnar Cruz. I personally like Gunnar, to be honest with you. Cam has not had much success in the practice atmosphere throwing the ball, I hear, and it's they win in this situation because they have time to develop even more. It's a new offense, similar offense, but it is a new offense. They're incorporating the run more in this new offense, and quarterbacks got to get used to that. You're not going to be throwing the ball 50, 60 times a game now. It's going to be downsized considerably. And if that's what it takes to find our number one guy at quarterback, then I think this can be a learning experience for them, and they can get some more reps, and they can learn this new offense and try to incorporate these receivers without Tay Martin.
Yeah, and I think if you're looking at Cruz and Cooper, then I think for me they lose. They're even more of a loser because they kind of had the leg up on a Jaden DeLora or a freshman coming in because they were here a little bit longer. But now you're kind of leveling that playing field, and a freshman coming in now, a freshman coming in next year, they're all going to be, at the same place. So I think this really just opens up that competition, which hurts everybody because nobody has the inside track to winning that job. It's very wide open. So, whenever they do get on the field, we're going to have to see who's under center. So that's all for our show today. Thank you for tuning in to the first episode of Cougar Dash. We're going to be doing this every week along with other schools in the Pac-12 here to cover your favorite Pac-12 team. Make sure to follow us at Dash Sports TV on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, and also go to our website, dashsports.tv. We'll see you next week.